early 19th century liberals debated and rejected women's rights. Women during the American Revolution, women during the French Revolution, heard the rhetoric around liberty, equality, fraternity. And they said, well, what about us sisters? What about the women? Liberals listened to that and they rejected that. Women never gave up. They persisted in the demand for political and social equality. They did not want to put their future into the hands of liberal politicians in the same way that liberal politicians didn't want to put their future in the hands of monarchs. Women throughout the end of the 19th century pushed the boundaries of political participation because theoretically, politics was a man's job. What they created was a feminist movement. Feminism is the belief that women are equal to men and they deserve the same fundamental rights. Men and women are not fundamentally different. Men do not have inherent political rights and women do not have inherent subordinate positions. Feminists want all humans to be treated equal, that all humans have inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that women cannot truly be happy until they have the same rights as men. They had to overcome the resistance by the because they were anti-feminist. Both men and women opposed feminism. They did this based on the doctrine of separate spheres, that there was a male sphere of life and there was a female sphere of life. There was a man's sphere of life and there was a woman's sphere of life. The female sphere was the private sphere, the spiritual sphere. Women were in charge of the household. Women were in charge of raising children. Women were in charge of making sure the children went to church. Men, on the other hand, had the public sphere. Men were the ones who served in the military. And going all the way back to ancient Greece and ancient Rome, military service meant political participation. Since women didn't go into the military, they didn't have anything to say in public life. Men went into the marketplace. Men went into business. And so the antis created all of these images of women who were in the public sphere. Women who went into a bar, women who went into a cabaret, women who were in the public sphere were somehow corrupt and sinful and maybe a prostitute. Good, wholesome women found a man, got married, had kids. That was her job. That was her role. That was her destiny. She needed to put herself under the care of a good man. And it was the man who went out and conquered the world. Right? This was the whole ideology of the opposition to feminism. That treating weak women equally would both diminish the women's role as well as the male role in society. And so women shouldn't be allowed to vote because being allowed to vote is a public act. And women had a private role. One of the justifications for separate spheres was that men would be better at protecting their little women, or men would be better at protecting their families. But women were at the forefront of showing that they weren't getting equal protection, that men weren't even living up to the standards that they had set for themselves. And so women in the late 19th century began demanding equal protection of laws. For example, Josephine Butler highlighted the discriminatory or detrimental impact of laws on women. Her chief focus was the Contagious Disease Act. The Contagious Disease Act allowed police to stop, arrest, and forcibly search a woman for contagious diseases, as long as the police officer suspected them of prostitution. Josephine Butler was able to highlight how such a low level of suspicion of prostitution allowed for an intrusive examination of a woman's body. Now, the government tried to justify this, saying, look, prostitutes are a threat to national security. Prostitutes spread venereal diseases among sailors and soldiers. So the government has a responsibility to protect the nation from prostitutes. And Josephine Butler was able to show middle-class women and working women that they were vulnerable to police abuse. She kept up the public pressure until Parliament revoked these laws. Josephine Butler also then focused on child prostitution, in particular, the age of consent. Because in England, in the 1860s, 1870s, the age of consent was 13 years old. A man could have sex with a child at 13. This opened up the door to child prostitution. And she found a case of an Eliza Armstrong in which the parents sold the little girl for £5. This case was so outrageous that Parliament was forced to act against child prostitution, raising the age of consent. She was able to show, Josephine Butler was able to show how the laws of men did not protect women and children. She used freedom of the press, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, right? All of the things that are available under liberalism to show how the government of England was failing the women and children of England. And she was a feminist, demanding equal protection of laws. So even though she was not in Parliament, Parliament passed a Criminal Law Amendment Act of 1885, which did criminalize child prostitution. Josephine Butler showed how political activism could put pressure on government officials to make life better. Simply changing the law, though, did not improve the lives of all women. And so the Pankhurst family pushed for full-scale political participation, that it was up to women with political power to protect themselves, that men would never protect women, never protect children. It was up to everyone, males and females, men and women, becoming politically conscious that women had political and economic and social equality. So the leader of the family was Emmeline. She had two daughters, Sylvia and Christabel. They organized large-scale demonstrations. They organized marches to bring attention to women's suffrage. They created the Women's Social and Political Union. They used the right to freedom of assembly to gather people around this idea of women's political, economic, and social equality, feminism. One of their large-scale demonstrations was in Hyde Park, 1908. And if you get a chance to find this picture or pictures like it on the internet, you'll zoom in and you'll see that this is thousands of people who are gathering at a political demonstration in order to change the law. They wanted women to have the right to vote. Didn't happen before World War I.